Welcome to the course Disability Studies in India, Historical, Social and Cultural Perspectives. In this module, we are talking about theories and model of disability, and this lecture number 10 is going to talk about disability and theory of embodiment, right? But before I come to what this lecture is all about, let me go back and discuss what we discussed in the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, I was talking about disability and minority identity. In the previous lecture, I talked about four important features that constitutes any identity: recognizability, differential power, discrimination, and one important is recognizability and the power treatment sort of things. So there are four which you can go back in the lecture and you can see if I missed out something. It's not a big deal, you can see again. These four are talking about that how identity is formed, how it is shaped, group awareness. That's one I forgot to mention that. Now I'm mentioning group awareness, and how you become aware of the politics through which you are discriminated, because then only you can challenge and produce a different form of a narrative, different questions of narratives, or kind of a counter narrative to challenge that this is not true. Like in terms of a gender, it was told like, how do you know that you are discriminated? How are you aware? How will you know that? This is why identifiability, recognizability, I won't say that this one is important, this one is not important. For me, they four are extremely significant, and therefore you have to read document in details if you want, so that you can understand how does it go around, right? And why I'll be talking about this theory and models of disability, because as the lecture proceeds, you will see that how it is discriminated, how they are protesting, and when I will talk about, let's say, literature and films, I will use certain examples, I will talk about myths, so on and so forth. How you will see that how they all have contributed in making people internalize that they are weak or they are not good for the society, they are less valued. As I discussed in this module, ideology of ability, right? How a person who is not able, so-called able, is less valued. He is not human, right? The very definition of human we also debated. But these are important concepts. These are important discussion to understand them, because until and unless we understand them, we cannot talk more on what disability is, how disability is how disability is a victim of prejudices and oppressions. So, because I don't want my students just to understand, oh yeah, disability is prejudice, the disability is discriminated. How do you know that they are discriminated? How do you understand what the power or what the narrative is all about? So, they are the important concepts and models and the framework. They help you in developing the notions around disability, right? So, in this lecture number 10, I am going to talk about disability and theory of embodiment. This extremely significant lecture and also loaded one, right? Because I may not be able to explain every small points, but I would request you all that you read more in detail to understand what the point is all about, what I am talking about. Because embodiment cannot be explained in just in one lecture, like it needs entire course. So therefore, it's my humble request, before I delve into it, please read more on embodiment, right? Look at the first slide. So feminist philosophers have long contended that all knowledge is situated. All knowledge is situated. It arises from a specific social location and is deeply embodied. This understanding allows them to argue that individuals in marginalized social positions possess an epistemological advantage, enabling them to theorize society in a way that differ from those in dominant position. Knowledge is situated primarily because it is shaped by perspective. For example, the view of Earth from the moon differs drastically from that of an ant, illustrating how different perspectives can offer distinct conception of object, particularly social objects. Like, you see that I have written very explicitly, beautifully, clearly for you, so that you can understand that how knowledge is situated. I'll tell you how knowledge is linked with the idea of embodiment. I'm sure that you must have read Foucault, but if you have not read the Archaeology of Knowledge, it's my humble request to you all, please read that book, Archaeology of Knowledge. Okay, so moving ahead, all knowledge is situated, right? Let's say, for example, what is a knowledge? Knowledge is the way we understand society, the way we understand our surroundings, environment, so on and so forth, right? Let's say, for example, for you, the knowledge that the water is cold, it tastes better, it tastes good. This is all depend on the kind of location. Let's say, for example, we as a North Indian people like a spicy food, and which we consider as a good food, we loved it, tasty, right? We say it's tasty, the very idea of the very knowledge that this kind of food is tasty is not acceptable in the West, because they don't like a spicy food. Living few, there are people, right? This is an example. It's not like I have done some research and I'm talking about, but I'm just talking about how knowledge is situated, it's located. Right? So this is about understanding about the particular locations where you are from, right? Because this is a location, this is knowledge which comes from a specific position, is through that you possess an epistemological advantage, right? Then only you can say this something. Let's say, for example, there's a possibility that in certain section of the society, certain community is not marginalized, but in other they are marginalized. It's all about locations. So situated knowledge is not solely about perspective. There's another point, right? So thinking that situated knowledge is all about perspective, it is also embodied. That's the point, right? It's also embodied. The way our bodies are positioned, they are also shape our understanding. For example, I'm sure that you will understand this. Let's say, for example, the idea of a pen, right? The idea of a pen. We have a different way, the way we understand pain, right? Oh, my body is aching, I cannot tolerate it. You have a different understanding of pain. There's a woman who has given birth, normal delivery, not cesarean one, to a baby. For her, the very idea of a pain is very different. So this is what I am saying, the knowledge is not only situated, it's also embodied. It's not just about the perspectives. It's not only that how you look at it, it's also about the way your body is positioned. And this is what involves our phenomenological insight, experiences that affect how we interpret those perspectives. That's the point. Experiences that affect how we interpret those perspectives. So let's say, for example, many women, right, throw like a girl, not due to any physical inability, but because the social representation of femininity constrain how women are encouraged to move their bodies. Over time, these learned bodily movements become ingrained and making it difficult to unlearn them. So as Young explains, women in sexist society are physically handicapped insofar as we learn to live our existence in accordance with the definition that patriarchal culture assigned to us. We are physically inhabited, confined, positioned and objectified, right? So it depends that in which society you are, like you are living in a society which is you are living in a society where you are discriminated kind of a body you have, and later on you ingrain it. So this differential and pejorative treatment of a woman can manifest physically in how their bodies are perceived through muscle mass, agility or physical capabilities. Almost as if their physical treatment over a form of a disability. This embodiment is also a form of situated knowledge, reflecting the claims made about and by women in society. For instance, the unequal embodiment of a woman who has experienced childbirth might offer her a new understanding of physical pain. Similarly, menstruation can provide a distinct awareness of a blood. So, women's gender identity is embodied differently due to their role in reproductive labor. So, the presence of the body is not merely about perspective, but about generative profound insights and significant theories regarding the world. This is a very important point, that the presence of the body is not merely about perspective, but about generating profound insights about significant theories regarding the world. It's not about only perspectives. It's also the location, the experience, the kind of a body we have. So here you see this embodiment where I'm putting more focus on body. It's not like everything is outside. That's true that the way we understand is cultural, but at the same time, we cannot outrightly reject the notion of the body. Body is a significant loci, is a site where knowledge is produced, it is contested, it comes into the existence, right? So, embodiment is undeniably central to the field of disability studies, right? In fact, if you read Margaret Sheldrake, Janet Price, they all have extensively talked about embodiment. They have contributed a lot to understand the body. Because for me, without embodiment, we cannot understand what disability studies is about. And the focus on disability highlights how embodiment and social locations are deeply interconnected. The specificity of disability identity is often tied to the critical importance of embodiment, where the tacit or embodied knowledge associated with particular disability justifies their values to society at large. George Lam's body itself carries a set of theoretical claims about architecture. The US Supreme Court, in its ruling against the state of Tennessee, determined that Lane's inability to access the Polk County courthouse exemplified a broader pattern of discrimination against people with disabilities through the American legal system. So here you see that the point I'm talking about, that disability cannot be understood in isolation until I understand, you see that in what position they are, in what location they are, how their body is navigating with the society and the environment. They are extremely significant point to understand that how embodied knowledge is associated with particular disabilities, and that's why you see that there are people who for them all disabilities are not the same, right? Because it's about the location that they belong to. That's why I have been talking about that in rural setup, people with disabilities are discriminated less than the urban setup, right? Because in the rural setup, they have kind of a work structure where they can also be the part of, they can also contribute economically, financially, produce, they can produce labor power. Unlike urban setup where the structure is so rigid that it demands only a specific set of a body or labor power can be utilized. Like only if you have this one, then only you can be utilized, which is not the case. It's a more diffused in rural setup, and that's what I was talking about, that how it is important to understand the location to know about disability. So if we are going deep into the concept of disability passing, I mean, I'm sure that I have been being very vocal about talking about that, how Sociology has contributed a lot in disability studies, or let's say cultural studies has contributed a lot in disability studies. Passing is also a term which was used by American sociologists, right, which is a means of avoiding social responsibility or manipulating for personal gain, right, you pass it on, but as a form of embodied knowledge, right. So this knowledge developed in response to societal prejudice against disability reveals the relationship between the social environment and human ability. Let's give you an example, right. A young deaf woman attempting to pass as a hearing will only succeed if she possesses a deep understanding of the cultural norms, behavior, physical, gesture, conversational rituals that define hearing in a society. Disabled people who pass as able-bodied are not cowards, cheats, or artists. They are adept interpreters of the world. Their unique insights provide valuable lessons which society as a whole can learn, right. So this is a very important point which I am talking about, that how this pass is given to other people, right. Embodiment is also a point of contention in disability studies, as it is situated between two competing models of disability. The medical model views disability as a characteristics of the individual body that necessitates medical intervention, and it has and in contrast the social model defines disability in relation to the social and built environment, asserting that it is these environment that disable people, that the solution lies in social justice interventions, right. So here the point what I am talking about, that this is also very contesting concern for it's debatable as well. It's also problematic because the two dominant model that we have, one is a medical model and another one is a social model. So according to the medical model, that body, there is a problem with the body, it should be fixed. Obviously disabled activists and scholars contest the situation. And then we have a social model of disability which it outrightly reject the body, and they say that every problem lies in the society, and if you fix the society, there is absolutely no problem. So they both are problematic, right. So how are we going to bring these two models together to understand embodiment, so that a rich conversation can emerge with these discussions? So critiques of the medical model, they argue that it places too much emphasis on the body, while those critiquing the social model, they contend that it overlooks the significance of embodiment altogether. So to move forward without reverting to the medical model, which tends to label individuals as defective, the next step for disability studies is to develop a theory of complex embodiment. Such a theory would acknowledge disability as a valuable form of a human variation, integrating the realities of embodied experience with the social dimension of disability. This is why I was talking about theories of embodiment, because here you see that we are proposing, that scholars have proposed a complex theory of embodiment, like how they both can come together, where it's like not rejecting the body completely, like entire onus is on the society, and not rejecting the entire a body, that there is nothing to do with the body, there is something to do with the body and society. So both have to come together. So you have to integrate realities of this embodied experience with the social dimension of disability. So you have to take the body dimensions as well, like personal experience, how do you look at yourself and want to navigate, and at the same time how society social dimension of disability, how society imposes restrictions on disability, right? So this theory of complex embodiment, it brings attention to how disability environments shape people's lived experience of their bodies, while also recognizing that some aspects of disability, such as chronic pain, health effects, aging, and originate within the body itself. So these bodily conditions are not to be seen as less important than the disabilities caused by environmental factors, nor should they be considered defects or deviation simply because they are resistance to change. Instead, they are part of the natural spectrum of human variations, which encompasses both differences between individuals and the changes that occur within a person's lifestyle. So these internal factors must be considered alongside the social forces that influences disability. So this complex theory of embodiment, the contribution of complex theory of embodiment is to give due importance that body deserves, right? Otherwise, what would happen if we completely rely upon the social model of disability? Then it would be that there is no variations, there is no differences, all lies with the society. However, we are going to pitch and question this understanding, and by saying that there are differences, there are bodily variations, and they have something to contribute in our society. Having said this, it's not that again you exclude the social model, but saying that, but despite this very fact that disability is responsible only when you impose certain restrictions which is socially, which are governed by the ableist assumptions, which are led, which are motivated, encouraged by certain ideology of ability, where the difference of the body is not given due importance, right? So this complex theory of embodiment, which I was trying to explain to you, that they both have to come together to make you understand that how we can make a negotiation between medical model and the social model, because they both are extremely significant to understand. So unlike the social model, which focuses the external cause of disability, or the medical model, which I have already explained to you, so this body and the social context are mutually transformative, right? As Jung famously argued, social representations shape how we experience our bodies, but the body also has the power to shape how it is socially represented, right? So in some instances, the body operates in ways that social representation cannot fully control. So it's a living dynamic entity. Bodies are vital. It's not vital and chaotic. Let's celebrate that. Possessing as much complexity as the linguistic system that critical and cultural theories often explore. The association of the body with the mortality and fragility tends to foster a general mistrust of embodied knowledge. It's often easier to think that the body as a garment, a vehicle, a burden, rather than as a complex system that defines our humanities, informs our knowledge, shapes our individual and collective futures. So in the context of disabilities, these concerns becomes even more pronounced. There is a temptation to believe that the body can be altered as easily as changing clothes, and the dominant ideology of ability, which I have discussed in the previous lectures, tends to dismiss any desire to understand and accept the disabled body as it is. So instead, the more common response to disability is to erase any visible signs of difference, to long for a return to an imagined state of physical perfection, and to reject the idea that the body has a value as part of human variation unless it's a flawless. So ideology and prejudice to permeate all aspects of human life, making certain groups and individuals inferior or less human. So people of color, women, poor, individuals with different sexual orientations, and those with disability regularly face societal intolerance. However, in few other areas of existence do people risk waking up one day as other, or let's say every individual's once scorned. So imagine a white racist suddenly transformed into a black man, as an anti-Semitic becoming Jewish, or a misogynist turned into a woman. Such radical shift in identity seems fit for science fiction, often explored for comedic effect or shallow moralizations. But what the point I wanted to tell you is this, that to understand disability, no fiction is needed to contemplate such transformation. Like even today you are able, but tomorrow you may you fall under the category of disability. So this able-bodied is a become disabled. This disabled body can become able, which is possible. For this, you don't have to wait for any miracle to happen, right? So to conclude my lecture, the theory of complex embodiment is important, that we need to negotiate between medical model and social model, where we have to give due importance and emphasis on the body, so that a new rich experience can come about the society, about the surroundings, about the world. Moving ahead, when we also get into more into the theory of complex embodiment, it also tells that limiting to the body into one form, that there is only one way to look at the body, or there is only one variation in the society, can also be challenged, and counter narrative can also be produced, that there are bodies which differ from each other. There are diversities, there are variations within the bodies, among the bodies, and about the different bodies in the societies. So when we are going to accept this pretty notion that there are variations in the body, bodies are very different, not the one body which medically produced, after that we will start celebrating and respecting the differences, and that is what I called body marked with differences, not people with disabilities, right? So with this I would like to end my lecture. Thank you so much. See you in the next module. Take care. Bye bye.